Welcome to episode 3 of Let's Make a Better Memphis. I'm joined again by my co-host, Michael Williams. Our other co-host, Sherry Hopper, isn't able to join us tonight because she is at the Orpheum with her daughter, Emma Lynn, celebrating her 12th birthday. So happy birthday from all of us.
Yay!
Our guests today on the show are Marybeth Conley and Rick Woodall. They are both here today to talk about their nonprofit, Flip My Life. Flip My Life is about renovating homes, rebuilding lives, and restoring hope. They're going to share with us and our audience their plan on how they're going to do that here in Memphis. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you
so much.
Michael, Sharon, I thought this was a perfect subject to have on Let's Make a Better Memphis because, what we want to do, obviously, really good things in our community. And, what you guys are doing is just a wonderful thing. And, the background on how you guys got to this point is such a great story. It's truly remarkable, in my opinion. It shows the power of, faith, God, synchronicity, and everything fall into place at the right time. And if anyone that's lived in Memphis, for more than a few months, you know who Marybeth Conley is. She started working at WREG back in September of 1985 and was the co-host of the Emmy-nominated Live at 9 with Alex Coleman right at 20 years. She cares a lot about our city and she wants to make it a better and safer place to live. Marybeth, the backstory on how this, came about is really close to your heart, and it's an emotional one. And Michael and I just sort of want to shush up here at the beginning and let you share this adventure from the beginning on, what gave you this idea and how it's come to fruition.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, you are right about how much I care about Memphis. I was a 25-year-old East Tennessee hick when I first came to Memphis, and folks there were so friendly and warm and caring. It kind of blew me away because over here in East Tennessee, all we ever heard was crime, 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 and racial problems. Memphis definitely has problems, many of them based in poverty, generational poverty, but it's also got such a heart. And so I fell in love with it. And over the last 4 years since Rick and I have been together, I think it's safe to say.
I'd never been to Memphis before and just heard from a cousin how terrible it was. But I tell you what, if we didn't have a house already in Oak Ridge, I'd love to be down in Memphis. I've just fallen in love with that place. It's awesome.
Yeah, the people are what makes it special. So anyway, the story is pretty remarkable, Michael. And we always say this is not our project. It is 150% God's project, because I had never been concerned about criminal justice reform. I didn't know anything really about the criminal justice system. I'd never been a police reporter. I'd never been a general assignment reporter where I covered crime. I always covered consumer issues. And then, of course, with Live at 9, we covered crime, but as a reporter, I never went out and met any victims and that sort of thing. So it really wasn't an issue for me. But starting in about 2003, I had some pretty heavy family problems. Centering around a child of mine who was struggling, and my husband's and my 180-degree difference in how to best handle this for our family. And I'll just leave it at that. But it created a situation where, frankly, I was being abused. And I couldn't really recognize it for what it was. But it was awful. And I blamed my anxiety, my fatigue, my stress, and my just constant sadness on being on TV. Because when you're on TV, even in the grocery store, you have to be happy. And so I was constantly pretending. And after about 6 years, I just couldn't do it anymore. The pretending that I was okay was really wearing me down. And that's when I reached for God. I'd always been in church, but I'd never had a relationship. And I really didn't know for sure that God was real, but I was kind of out of options. So long story short, within about 3 weeks, he reached back in an inexplicable way that involved a man from Rhode Island on a plane and a woman in Knoxville who did not know the man. He told me to get a book called Sit, Walk, Stand to read, and that would take me into Ephesians, and God would direct me from there. And I got to Knoxville, had lunch with this friend of mine, and she had bought the book for me 3 days earlier, and she handed it to me at lunch. I'd never heard of the book.
Yeah.
They didn't know each other. And I tried so hard to explain it away, and I couldn't. And I thought, oh my God, I think God's real. And it was the first time I knew I could ask him for anything, and he would listen. So that was 2009. And over the next 6 years, I fell in love with the peace that I had in an hour and a half in the morning time with him. And I just talked to him like a friend. Sometimes I was mad at him. Sometimes it wasn't very reverent, I guess, but it was just a conversation, and it brought me so much peace. And it was really the only peace that I had throughout the day, because my family problems were getting worse as my child got older and more difficult to handle. So in 2015, I just wanted the peace. So I told God, I will do whatever you want me to do. Just show me. I really don't want to do TV. I was still trying to get out of TV. But, I will do whatever. Just don't make it be TV. I naturally leave it to me to tell God what it was I wanted, to hear. And in about 2 weeks after really surrendering to his will, I found myself writing the words "flip my life" in my prayer journal. And I was writing out an idea for a show in which I would take abandoned houses and renovate them. Home renovation has been my hobby for quite a while. Renovate them into homes for people trapped in generational poverty. And it was going to be a competition show of sorts, sort of like Survivor, where we'd have weekly competitions. Anyway, something was wrong with the idea. And I just used that as an excuse to kind of say, yeah, well, I'll get back with that later. And this went on for 3 years. I kept putting it aside. And about every 6 months, it would come back in my prayer time. And I'd start doodling. And I was like, no, I just can't figure out what's wrong with the idea. And in the end of February 2018, it came roaring back in my prayer time. And when I say roaring, I can't describe it adequately, but it was like the loudest presence in my head that I just couldn't get rid of. It wasn't an audible voice, but it basically said, it's time to get started on Flip My Life, but the houses are not supposed to go to people trapped in generational poverty. The houses need to go to people returning to Memphis from prison. And my reaction was, huh? Sorry.
It's okay.
Rick was so riveted. Rick was so riveted.
This story's getting good.
Yes, it is.
As if he hasn't heard it. As if he hasn't heard it a million times by now.
I don't care. It's always good.
But that wasn't my issue. And I told God, I'm like, I don't get it. What? But it wouldn't go away. And every morning it was just this presence in my head. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, fine. I just wanted quiet. And so I said, and I wrote it down in my prayer journal. I said, God, okay, fine. The first thing to do is to shoot a pilot. And I can figure out the story part, but I don't have any money. So I need a contractor with whom I have chemistry who would care about the issue of reentry. And when you figure that out, we'll get started. And the voice went away. And I was not thinking about my life anymore. I actually kind of forgot about it. Just went on with life. And every morning in my prayer time, I just, talk about other stuff. So Memorial Day, 3 months, this was March of 2018 when I gave him that checklist of the 3 things I needed to do Flip My Life. And 3 months later, Memorial Day weekend, my family was getting together over in Mascot, which is the little mining town east of Knoxville where I grew up. And so I didn't really want to go. I was worn out emotionally. And it was just another weekend where I was going to have to pretend. I'm sorry, hang on, let me let me get rid of this text that's coming in. But I went. And on Saturday afternoon, my 14-year-old daughter and I walked around my old neighborhood. And I was just pointing out some of the highlights, like you do, you know, talking about what it was like growing up there. And we passed the last house on the circle. And I said, oh, I used to walk around at night wishing this boy would come out. I used to have a big crush on him.
It'd be me.
I didn't even realize I mentioned his name, but the next day she and I were driving somewhere, and from the back seat, she suddenly said, I found him and he's so old. That would be him.
She loves telling that part. Yes.
And I said, what are you talking about? I said, what are you talking about? And she handed me her phone, and it was Rick's Facebook page. And I didn't feel any birds singing or bells ringing, but what I felt was curiosity. Because in his profile picture and his cover photo, well, he was on a Harley, and I have some, well, I'll go back to that. But anyway, he was on a Harley and sitting on his lap was a tiny little black girl. And then in his profile picture, he was holding the same child in a picture. And the two pictures just showed so much love. And I want you to think back to 2018. And that was a time period when it suddenly felt in America like it was okay to be very vocal about being racist. And it seemed to be okay suddenly to be bigoted and to express that. And that was breaking my heart, because racism has always been my trigger ever since I moved to Memphis, which was when I had the first experience seeing racism. Knoxville is not a very diverse community, so you don't see systemic racism. And so 2018 was really, my heart was breaking over a lot of the talk and social media and just everywhere. And as I said, Rick had a Harley, and Rick, I knew, grew up in East Tennessee, not the most diverse area of the country. I knew his family was very, very conservative. And I, not that all conservatives are racist, but I had this kind of thought in my mind that he looked like somebody who should be one of those disenfranchised white males who feel like people of other ethnicities or genders are taking their rightful place in the world.
Wow.
And yet, he does. I mean, look at him. Is he not the poster child? Especially,
no. I'm gonna tell you, and I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sitting here, or you are my girl, Marybeth. You've always opened up. You've always allowed me an opportunity. I'm just amazed at your truth and how you're so comfortable in your truth, you know. And we just need more of that in the world. And I think it would be a lot better place, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm definitely an individual for, you know, you are who you are. I was in the military for 20 some years. I believe in everyone.
I'm a military brat.
That's what I'm talking about. I believe in First Amendment rights. I believe in Second Amendment rights. You know, I believe in all of that, as long as it does not infringe upon or intrude upon somebody else or offend them.
There you go.
You can do what you want to do. But I actually saw a lot of this when you first announced it, popped up on my page, and I actually sit there and watched it, and I was like, wow, you know, I was just amazed, because it's something, you know, and I am a believer as well. So it's something when you kind of succumb to all of those inner feelings, and you listen to God and you submit and you feel free, you know, to do the things that you truly need to do. And we are Marybeth, me, and I'm sorry, what's your name, sir, again?
Oh, Rick.
Rick. I'm sorry, Rick.
Yeah, that's all right.
And I apologize, but we are in the third quarter of life. And for us, I'm 63. So for me,
we are too. Yeah.
You know, it's nothing like peace of
Yep.
all of that hard work and all of that. So I'm sorry, I didn't want to please continue to tell the story, but
interrupt anytime.
I'm sitting here in awe because
I was telling Rick about you a little bit because he knew I'd told him about Michael. But I didn't realize you were a every week co-host. And so when I realized that, I was telling Rick about you and how just I've always felt like you were so awesome, so cool, so straightforward, and just had a good heart in a tough profession. Where, man, talk about a profession that could kill the heart real quick because you see the worst. But anyway, I really, speaking of God, I know in my heart, because I was still married at this time, I was telling myself that our problems were with our child, when in reality, I had emotionally left the marriage years ago because I was not being protected by my husband. And it's not his fault. He's a good guy, but he was raised by a bully and he literally did not know how to stand up to one. So long story short, I would not have reached out to Rick had we dated in the past, had I thought there was any risk, had I been feeling any romantic notions. That's how amazing God is to me. He knew what would trigger me. He knew. I firmly believe that is why the 2 pictures were on Rick's Facebook page.
I get to interrupt now.
Yeah, because this is very
she never lets me talk. But we were raised. I moved down from Rhode Island, Navy brat. So we come down Tennessee. My dad was from Tennessee, but anyway, move in. We're about 5 houses apart. There's 12 houses in this little mining community that the management of the mines ran. So they had a nice big size pool for them. And there was only like 3 or 4 families using the pool because everybody was older. So we'd meet up at the pool. She had an older sister, I had an older brother. We'd play cards. She'd just talk and carry on. But I tried to flirt with her. She'd shut it down. She wouldn't talk. So I had the hots for her, okay? She was a young blonde that looked good in a 2-piece bathing suit, let me tell you.
I was so shy.
But she couldn't talk. So I kind of gave up on her. You know, I was like, well, this is never going anywhere. And she went to Catholic high school. I went to a regular high school. So we'd see each other a little in the summer and in the fall, you know, but that was about it. But I'd always, like I said, I really ran off and got married and didn't think much more about her other than I knew she was a nice, sweet girl. And I knew she was in Memphis and I knew she was on TV, but I had no idea how much or what she did. You know. So,
yeah, the last time we'd seen each other was 1985 when I moved over here. I saw him a few months before. But anyways, I firmly believe that God knew what to grab me with. And I did not friend Rick. I really don't know why, because like you said, we were friends. Mm-hmm. I just went to his page a few times to try to figure out who that little girl was to him and why he loved her. And finally, it came to the end of July and we were getting close to the Charlottesville anniversary. And, you know, one challenge with being on the daily news is that whatever's in the headlines, you're in front of all the time. And of course, the media beat that to death. Not that it didn't need to be, but it was constant. And as we got closer to the anniversary of that riot, white nationalist riot, I just had to know. And so I messaged him. My intention as a nosy reporter was just to say hi to an old friend and then work my way around to who is this little girl? So in his message back to me, he told me, I'd always had the biggest crush on you.
Oh, wow.
And I was sitting there, I'm telling you, I was 59 years old, sitting there on the couch with my family around, reading these words, and I lost my mind. Back in 1978, when he got engaged at 19, I've always remembered my whole life where I was, what I was wearing. I was in my orange and brown polyester uniform at Jerry's restaurant on my break when I opened up the News Sentinel paper and saw his engagement picture and felt my heart drop into my stomach. And that night reading, I'd always had the biggest crush on you, my heart went. And I was telling myself, you are crazy. You don't know this person. You haven't seen him in 40 years. You have a family. You're 59 years old. But he messaged me later and said, call me sometime and let's catch up. And so the next morning I called him. We talked for 3 hours, 10 days every day.
Every day we talked. Yeah.
10 days. It was just...
I told her who the little girl was.
Yes.
I'd known her since she's 8 years old now, and she was our flower girl here just a month ago. But my daughter works with kids and in Chattanooga on a grant program, and she'd take kids from like 6 months old and have them for 3 years, 8 kids at a time, and get them prepared for preschool. And this little girl fell in love with my daughter, and she would go home with my daughter on Wednesday nights and stuff because her mom worked with autistic kids. So I love babies and kids, and my daughter said, hey, come on down. So I'd go down there, and when I wasn't working or took the day off, I'd go down and hold the babies and play with them, And Fallon fell in love with me, and I fell in love with her. And I was kind of like a dad, grandpa for her.
Right.
And she was like my granddaughter. And I mean, we go on vacation together. We do Christmas. Any chance I get to see her, I get to see her. It's awesome.
She's very cool.
She's something special.
So anyway, we spent the next 10 days talking on the phone, and then we met for coffee in Nashville. And on the way home, I burst into the biggest tears. We never talked about the future. We didn't talk about what are we doing.
I got to interrupt one time, because once I saw her get out of the car, I knew, and I'd prayed to God weeks earlier. I hadn't dated anything for 10 years. And I was like, God, and I've been in church all my life. I'm deep into church and served on a lot of church things. But anyway, I had grown weary of God. But I said, God, I've not had my prayers answered a long time. I want to either build me a house or build me a house with a wife. If it's meant to be that I'm going to have a wife, send someone my way. If it's meant to be not, show me a sign. This was 5 weeks before she got in touch with me. So when we met in Nashville, I went, oh my God, this is the one. I knew it the first sight. Her feet, she walked straight. Now we'll tell that later, but
no, we won't.
I did tell her.
He goes down too many rabbit holes.
I did tell her there at the Opryland Hotel. We were set up all night and talked. I said, I'll either be with you or I'll never be with anyone the rest of my life.
To which
I put the pressure on her.
I said, that is crazy because I'm not available. I was not, Bob and I had been trying to reconcile for about 1.5 years. And anyway, I fell apart on the way home from Nashville, and something else happened that I won't go into. It's too long. It's the longest story, but by the time I got to Memphis, I called Rick and I said, this is your one chance to run in the other direction, because I don't know if I'm strong enough to do what I need to do. He said, I'm not going anywhere. So long story short,
God answered my prayer.
I told my husband, this was 10 days after our first conversation in 40 years. And I told my husband that I inadvertently opened a door that I just wasn't going to be able to close. And when I told him the story, he agreed. We are friends.
It wasn't long. I went down and had breakfast with them. We're fine.
We're all one big family. And he knew, he, for 33 years of our marriage, he had always called me the catalyst. If any time that, we were going to do anything, we'd talk and talk and talk and talk and plan and plan and plan. And then finally I'd just say enough with this, and I'd just do it. And I was the catalyst for where we all needed to be. So anyway, the morning after I told Bob, and here's the killer. Morning after I told Bob, I was in my prayer chair, just talking to God. And that was when it hit me that in the first conversation Rick and I had on the phone, when we were catching up on 40 years of life, he told me that he'd been a contractor since the 90s. And in 2008, he told me in about a day that he lost his mind.
Is this my part?
You get to talk again.
2008,
Keep it short.
Right before Christmas. I won't go into all the details why, but I walked into a First Tennessee Bank with an unloaded BB gun and knew I shouldn't be there, wanted to leave. I walked up, apologized, told them I needed all their money. And I put the BB gun down on the counter. They could have just grabbed it from me, but I still feel terrible because I scared them. But they gave me, I didn't say don't put any dye packs in because I know that's what you're supposed to say, but I didn't. I just wanted out of there. But anyway, I drove away with 2 dye packs going off, and I rolled the window down on my truck and drove away. Now that's, I had dye packs going off in the air.
Like he was one of those stupid criminals.
Yes, very stupid.
But here's the kicker. Telling me on the phone, it was in prison that he saw people of different ethnicities with much less serious crimes and much longer sentences.
I was sentenced to 42 months, and if I'd have just cried a little bit, I probably could have gotten less. I was told I was guilty. I knew I was guilty. I deserved everything. I thought I was looking at 12 years. But anyway, I got sentenced to 42 months, did 31. I was sent out Ocilla, Georgia for a while, and then to Texas.
So he was telling me he never had to check a box when he got out. He had clients waiting. He had to rebuild his life, but he was able to slide right back into his life. And he, as he told me on the phone, it helped him evolve and see.
I saw my white privilege.
Yeah.
And it killed me.
Living in East Tennessee, you just really don't live it because you don't have good friends who are followed by the clerk's eyes when they shop. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Mike, right? Yeah. And so you just don't have that experience of real, true friendships. So he was telling me that this helped him evolve and become more aware. And so in my prayer time, the morning after I told Bob, is when it hit me that God said, 6 months ago, you told me you needed a contractor with whom you have chemistry who would care about the issue of reentry, and then you'd get started on Flip My Life. So what are you going to do now? And I went to Rick and I told him the whole story about Flip My Life. And he said, I'll do whatever I need to do to make your dream come true. And as I told him, it's not my dream. I don't want to do a TV show. I've done TV since 1982, and I never wanted to do it in the first place. I mean, I'm good at it and I like it, but it's not my dream to do another TV show, but it is my dream to do whatever God wants me to do. And I think it's pretty apparent since I ordered him like on a checklist and God delivered off the menu. So that's why we're doing it. And I've become, as I've read more about the criminal justice system, there are obviously people who are not redeemable. There are bad people.
I was in with some that they need to stay the rest of their lives.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But I was in with some that were doing 20 years for a little bit of marijuana, and I was doing 3 years for bank robbery. And that just
wasn't right.
Why
do we take away the right to vote? What does that have to do with anything? That just seems to me, if you have paid your debt to society and you've done the work and you've held yourself accountable. It meant a lot to me that when Rick told me what he did, he didn't say, I made a mistake. He didn't blame anybody but himself. And when I said, you're not a bank robber, he said, hold up. I am a bank robber. I can never walk away from the fact that I hurt.
I'm not a good one.
I hurt my parents deeply. I scared the tellers. I am a bank robber. So,
I still get emotional if I talk about it too long. So
I can imagine.
It weighs heavy.
Yeah.
So, if people hold themselves accountable and do the work to become productive and fill the gaps, whatever gaps there were in their lives that led them to that, like Rick has acknowledged, it was his pride that kept him from asking for help. He was trying to get enough money to finish 2 jobs so that he could get the rest of the money for the jobs, because he was underwater after the 2008 crash, because that was a nightmare for everybody. And that's why all his clients were canceling their jobs. He was giving them down payments back, et cetera, et cetera. So, who knows when in desperation what we'll do. And I guess for me, I feel like it's there, but for the grace of God, go I. So that's why we're doing Flip My Life. And the house is owned. We're going to be renovating a house in Fraser. It's a 4-bedroom. It was donated to Lifeline to Success, and they wanted to make it a transition house. And they just didn't have the money. So we're going to turn it into a 5-bed And we're going to get started in mid-November. We do not have all the funding that we need. We do have a very wonderful sponsor who's going to give us a lot of energy related, like HVAC and that sort of thing. But we don't have all the money for production. So we have a GoFundMe for that. But you know what? If we have to empty a 401k, we will.
We talked about it.
Because this is clearly what God wants us to do. And we want to do it. Even if we live in East Tennessee, which we do, we want to do it in Memphis.
I want to emphasize to all the other white motorcycle riders or whatever that there is white privilege out there. And you hear so many people saying, oh, it's not there, but it is. And I want people all over to know that. My little Fallon down there, I've got to do this for her, you know?
And Marybeth, as long as you were in television, you know, and you talked about it just a few minutes ago, that you weren't out in the field, you know, where the crime was happening, but you had to report on it, you know, every day, that, you know, Live at 9 and other things that you did. Mm-hmm. Did seeing all that, even from afar, did it have a mental effect on you?
You know, I think you compartmentalize when you're on the news. Honestly, there was one moment in Memphis that had a tremendous effect on me, and it was shortly after. It was one of my first stories, and it was because I was a consumer reporter. It's usually the poorer people who were being scammed. We were going into, and I can't remember the name of. It was the big project on Lamar, what we used to call projects. And, you know, it's big, tall buildings with a courtyard in the middle. And I walked into the courtyard with my photographer, and there was a baby about 1.5 years old, just in a diaper, no adults around. And the baby was playing with a stick in the dirt, just scratching in the dirt. And this was such a barren courtyard. There was nobody watching the baby. And I remember looking at the baby and thinking, oh my God, that child does not have a chance. So honestly, those are the stories that stuck with me more than crime. I think crime happens everywhere. I never felt like I was in danger in Memphis, quite honestly. I always felt like most of the crime in Memphis was domestic, in the sense that it was someone who knew someone else and they were mad at them. They had a beef. It seems like over the last year or so that's changed somewhat, that, you know, now people have guns in cars, and, you know, there were interstate shootings. And if someone is mad at, you know, person A is mad at person B and wants to take a shot and you're in the way, that clearly is a problem. But it was always the embedded poverty and the children affected by that really bothered me, Michael. And it weighed on me, because I felt like, why was I so blessed to be born into a 2-parent household? We didn't have any money, but we had discipline. They stressed education. They were good parents. Why was I so lucky? And I just see these children being born into situations where they have no guidance. They have no discipline. They have parents who weren't parented well themselves. And that's what breaks my heart. And that is a factor in crime, unfortunately. Not to make excuses for any bad behavior, but there are factors that there, but for the grace of God, go any of us.
You know, we've talked about on this podcast, you know, the first 2 that we did, we talked about the importance of going into the neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods, and get to these kids early on. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't do it and you don't get to them early on and give them those good people around them and the role models, and see that there is a way out, I mean, in many cases, it's a lost cause.
Right. That's right. Because if you don't have steady meals, if you don't have new shoes or any shoes without holes, if you don't have anything, and you're always in survival mode, and you see a drug dealer riding down the street with big shiny wheels and a great car and a great sound system, what example are you going to follow, right? That's where the money is. That's the business I'm going into. Wouldn't any of us do that if that's what we, you know, if our lives were in such contrast to that, you know?
The ones I talked to so much out in Texas. I was at Big Spring, Texas. And that's pretty much what the story was for so many of them. They had to survive and they had to eat. They had to make money. And sometimes because the color of your skin or whatever, you're not hired. You're not looked at for jobs. And that's where they found their money, was in drugs or whatever.
You just don't have a family that emphasizes education, makes you go to school.
Their parents or grandparents might have been raised up through,
But and it's not just the color of the skin. In Memphis, it's often that. But in the rural, like in the area of the country we grew up in, it's all white, but it's the same problem. Parents who
no money.
They weren't parented themselves. They don't know how to parent, perhaps. In other words, it's neither to point the finger of blame at anyone nor excuse bad behavior, because clearly there are other ways to make money. But human nature being what it is, I guess I can almost understand someone's bad choice if they just don't see any other way out, because nobody's ever shown them. Like you said, Michael, nobody's gone into the neighborhoods and said, hey, here's a better way.
Michael,
and kind of listening to guys. First of all, I want to say thank you, Marybeth, for number one, opening up Live at 9 to all of the different entities in this city. I think you were one of the treasures for this city, because even though you were on the news and everybody kind of looked at you as like one of those staples, because you had served the community for so long. And I just appreciate the fact that you always shared equally when it came to stories in regards to what was going on in the city of Memphis. And I always thought reporters had to be a little objective, but at the same time, be open to allow both sides of the story to be heard. And you and Alex always availed yourselves to the community. And I want to say thank you for that. I want to say thank you to Rick, just from sitting here listening to you, and like I said in the beginning, your truth. Because a lot of people, they make it, or they get to a place in life and then they forget where they come from. When we talk about, systemic poverty and different things in the community, I will tell you that I grew up here in the city of Memphis, and it was a little bit different back in my day. I will tell you, we were poor, but I didn't know I was poor, because we had
everybody was poor.
Yeah, we had values, educated, stressed in our household, And I put a post up the other day, just looking around at. I have a cousin who is dealing with Blue Oval that's coming in, and she's working with, doing all kinds of great and wonderful things. I had another little cousin who was out in LA walking on the runway. I had another cousin who's a flight attendant. My son's a police officer. My wife's a police officer. My daughter was a dispatcher. I mean, and I just put a post up and said, my ancestors would be so proud, because where we came from and how we have overcome a lot of things. Now, there are people that are going into the community and that are saying that, there is a better way. However, because of a lot of the strife that has prevailed in the community for so long, and like you said, it's not just the Black community. It's all over the United States. Affected by economics. Everybody has been affected by the pandemic. You have major companies that have went out of business because of the pandemic. And there is, I got back to Memphis and I saw a subdued racism. When I left in the when I left here in 78, going into the military, believe it or not, the quality of life was a lot better. And it mine when I got back, because when I was raised, we had public pools all over the place, community centers all over the place, programs Boys and Girls Club was a little bit different, but they were open.
Yeah.
They had proper staffing to whereas went into those facilities, they had planned programs for you. We had Pop Warner football. We had all kinds of things going on in the city to keep the youth engaged. Plus, me coming from poverty, it was kind of like, okay, you can do one or two things. You can either stay here or you could rise above all of this. And it was expected and kind of a competition for us to go to college. I went to University of Maryland. I went to University of Kentucky. I went to Wake Forest, Yale, Morehouse, Spelman, Howard, Morris Brown, Xavier, and I can go on and on and on. And it was kind of like, what school are you going to? Where did you go? Where are you getting into? What you going to do? You know, it's kind of a competition. But what I have seen is, and I'm going to tell you what disturbs me about Memphis. And I'm going to flip it. Back during the time I was coming up, the city council was predominantly white. The mayor was white. Yeah, it was civil rights and all of that going on. However, we got City Beautiful all the time. We had this, we had that. And like I told you, we had all of these programs that were geared toward the youth and the community and the embetterment of people. I'm going to tell Marybeth, the mayor was Black, the city council was Black, the county commission was Black, and well, both city council and county commission are Black, and the mayor is Black in the county. But I'm going to tell you, there are a whole lot less dollars being directed toward the development of the youth in this community. That's why it's not a hand. You know, we've always had drugs, we've had weed, it's been kind of behind the scenes, but you've always had cocaine, you've had weed, you've had pills. You know, I got bused to Frazier in 19. I was in the first iteration of busing. And that was the first time I was introduced to Yellow Jackets and all of that kind of stuff.
Is it also the family? Has the family changed? Because like you said, you had parents who, like us, neither of our families had money, but our parents expected us to do better than what they did, whether it was going to a job, going to college, going to the military. And has the family changed?
It has. And why? I came from a single parent family. I had a mother. She was 5'2" tall.
I bet you're still scared of her.
I was going to say, yep.
She did not play.
Yeah.
The things that she said was...
I bet you also had a grandma.
I did. I did. And I had aunts. It was, believe it or not, I was raised in my community were a lot of strong females. Because my father was abusive. And I think I was 5 and my brother was 6, and he had abused my mother one day. And we told him we were going to kill him. And we're 5 and 6 years old.
Yeah.
That's what my mother said. I got to go. Because if my sons are talking about killing you at 5 and 6, I got to get out of the situation. We packed up a loaf of bread. There was some bologna in the refrigerator, and we left, and we never went back.
Wow.
But she persevered. We had a strong village because her mother, my aunts, because she didn't have any brothers, it was all girls. But my mother and her aunts, all of them rallied around each other. We all lived in a community around each other, and they helped. But it was expected that you were going to do better. It was expected that you would not bring dishonor upon that family.
Right. So
that meant everything to them.
How do we get back to that? Because it seems to me that is a major problem.
Well, and you said it, Marybeth, a lot of these young parents, because of time, they don't know how to be parents.
Right.
I'm going to tell you this. My mother was 14 when she had my brother, and she was 15 when she had me, but she was married. Because down here in the South, you could get married that young back then.
Yeah,
And we lived with my father for a while, and it just did not work out. He had graduated from Booker T. Washington. My mother went to Manassas, and you know, it was all about the community. You don't have a lot of community spirit anymore because everybody's a transient now. And I'm not from outside, I'm talking about from inside. It was Manassas. You always hear a lot of older Blacks, they talk about, I came from Manassas. I went to Douglas. I went to Booker T. Washington. I went to Carver. You know, that's a big thing for them because back then it was something, you know, even though you didn't have a lot, that identified the community that you were from.
Yeah.
You know, and that meant a lot because you strive to be on WDIA, to be the school reporter that answers, you know what I mean? You wanted to win the ROTC competition because it was competition amongst everybody. But now that everybody is all over the place, and even when they dispersed a lot of the projects, you had a lot of the crime that was kind of centralized in those areas. But then once they started realizing that those properties are quality properties. When you talk home right downtown, Dixie Home right downtown, Foot down, Hearst Village right downtown, Scudderfield right downtown. Those are valuable properties, which you hear the mayor, or Mayor Strickland was always talking about redeveloping the core of the city. But then what you did was dispersed all of these individuals that weren't used to taking care of homes, because what happened was now you have Section 8, they come in. You know, I have rental property. So I'm assured I won't do Section 8, me personally. I've never done Section 8.
Yeah.
But you are assured your money, but you're putting a young lady in there that doesn't know anything about taking care of a house.
Yeah. And has never seen it modeled that adults take care of a house. You know, they've never.
Right. You know? But living in those apartments, you had maintenance men. You know, if you came up in the projects, you had maintenance men. So if the water leaked, you called maintenance. If you call maintenance. If the HVAC was out, you call maintenance. But now you're putting them in a property. They're not used to cutting grass. You know, man, why did that property get away from them? They're not used to cutting grass, and it's a girl. But then you're also drawing in all of these males because she's living on Section 8, doesn't have to pay rent, getting assistance with her utilities. Now you got this young guy that moves in with her, and he's kind of mooching off of her and using her. And now she's procreating and having all of these kids out of wedlock that, you know, are going to be a burden on the system, which they are, and not necessarily in a loving, stable, thriving household, which leads to the little girl that you saw in the pamper when you went in and you went, wow, she doesn't have a chance. You know?
Exactly. It's so sad. It's a continuing cycle that we've got to stop because it definitely feeds crime. So,
but it's going to take tough love. I am for rehabilitation. I am for equal sentencing, because I heard, you know, what you guys and Rick was talking about. And it definitely exists, because you had a lot of African Americans or people of color that were going to jail and they were receiving a lot stiffer sentences. I think they should legalize marijuana, me personally.
Well, we do.
Absolutely.
I've never tried it, but I firmly believe in that. Yeah.
Well, I smoked it, Rick.
I think Marybeth did too. So, okay.
I tried it back in the day. And,
well, that's what I'm saying.
I understand it's a lot better now, honestly. But
actually, I think it was better back. I smoked it in the 70s when I was in high school.
Me too. When I was 15, and only once. My older sister brought it home, but I fell asleep. It made
That's what I said, Marybeth. I only did it once and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
My dad said if I did it at all, he was going to beat the devil out of me. So I didn't try anything.
Right.
I don't need any help sleeping. But you know, there needs to be equality, but there definitely needs to be accountability too. And I figure if we if we can put more training programs in jail. Hope Works does a marvelous job, but they can't do it all. Why aren't we spending some of our money that we spend on incarceration on real training for those who really will make use of it? Then, there are some who won't, but there are bad people who never got caught too. There are bad
I've heard that story several times.
There are bad people wearing suits who never got caught. So I'm just.
Ooh, you said a mouthful there.
We won't go there, but I don't know. I feel like there definitely needs to be a justice system. Absolutely. The idea of defunding the police is crazy in my mind. But it needs to be restorative justice in some way, because otherwise all we're doing is encouraging recidivism.
Because I'm going to tell you this real quick. I had a foundation called the Humble Hearts Foundation. I used to work with kids, and I worked with a lot of gang members. And what I saw was, you have young people, believe it or not, that are out here in these streets that are doing dirt. But just like with anybody, they reach a point to whereas they're like, I want to turn my life around. I want to do better and this, that. And a lot of them try, but they run into that brick wall because they can't do anything. They try to get a job and then they can't get hired, and it's kind of like, well, Mr. Williams, I'm trying to do right, but I got to take care of my family. They run into a young lady who's nice and sweet and kind, and they want to be that nice guy for them and be a provider for their family, but they can't. So what happens is they get sucked back into that which they know, and that's their means of survival. So we're pushing them right back out there into the streets to commit those crimes, because I've ran into a lot of young people and they're like, Mr. Williams, I'm really trying to do right, because I'll check on them. How you doing? What's going on? Mr. Williams, everything's going good, but it's rough. It's rough. It's rough. And I'm like, well, what's rough? And when you got people like Lifeline to Success, DeAndre Brown, and the program he has going on, we do need more programs like that, because when you talk about if they're going to keep the system the way that it is, and you got to check the box or something of that nature, we have to get back to the trades, because there are a lot of trades out there, just like with Rick, that you don't necessarily have to check the box. And that's one of the things that I preach. Tell these young kids, go to HVAC school. There are grants out there. There are all kinds of things to school. And a lot of those guys make more money than some of these people that are on 9-to-5 jobs every day.
I know for a fact.
Absolutely.
I've made a good living, but
and robots can't do those jobs. A lot of them. We're always going to need plumbers. So that's actually one of the things we're going to incorporate in Flip My Life. Is we're going to be training the folks who have an aptitude for that. We're going to be showing them some skills. Rick's going to teach them how to build a deck.
You can make good money building decks. That's my thing for the last 30 years. And it's started decks and then screen porches and then remodeling houses. But someone can go and build a deck and make money. And if they're good, their name will get put out there.
Yes.
And you don't have any boxes. You can be your own boss. And I hope that I can show some people how easy it is to do that, and then they take the initiative and run with it.
Right. Because there is
it gives you a sense of pride too. I know for a long time when I build a deck, I loved getting paid. But sometimes the biggest thing is when the homeowners would say, we just love this. It's an affirmation.
Right. So satisfaction and satisfied with your work. And then that's something that you created with your hands. That's something together, and that's self-gratification in that, to know that you have the ability to do that. And then normally people take more, and when you have a vested interest in the community, you have a vested interest in yourself, and now you feel your self-worth. And that was one of the other things, Marybeth, back in the day. People used to give you the ability to hope to dream, to aspire.
Right.
Even though you may come from nothing or had nothing, you always had in the back of your mind, because I'm one of those ones, I always thought it was nothing I couldn't do if I put my mind to it. You know? And when people told me that I couldn't do it, it made me want to do it even more.
I had an ex-wife that did that to me that really made me want to be a builder. Yeah, prove her. I showed her.
Okay, I know that's right.
But you're right. People had hope. And so, you know, maybe this will help folks who have felt like doors have been closed. Maybe they'll just, it'll give them a little bit of hope that somebody cares.
We're hoping that all this happens, that we can, if somehow, get on a regular TV to where we can expand this into all the cities.
Right.
To where this can be going on, if not us doing it, somebody younger, better looking than me, not better looking than Marybeth, but, you know, better looking than me, and
I don't know.
Get out and do this.
I always say, you know, God is in the miracle business, because to put two 63-year-olds on TV, really? I mean, that is not supposed to happen. So believe me.
But we're hoping they see more than just us. I hope they see our heart, and they see what can be done if the community comes together. And so far, Memphis is really coming together with this.
Yeah, I figure that, you know, if you do a documentary or a docuseries on the need for restorative criminal justice, you will only get an audience of people who already care about that and already understand that that's a way to help the community. So I think that's why God designed it as a flip show, because that is the most popular genre of TV. So we're hoping that people will watch for the flip, and they'll hear the stories of some of the people who have done wrong and what they've done to get back on their feet. And maybe it'll begin to sink in that, gosh, I kind of like that person. Wow.
Yeah, he's not a bad person. You know? She's not.
Like the woman we featured in our concept video, we shot a little pilot. She's wonderful. She's somebody you would want to have over for dinner. And she held up a store at gunpoint. But she did all the work to get back. I'd love to send that to you guys, in fact, and let you watch it. Erica is remarkable. So anyway, I would love to. Yeah. So that's why I think God designed it as a flip show. Like I say, we take no credit. It was not our idea down to the name. We're just walking it out. So.
Okay. You know, guys, Michael, Sherry, and I, we talked about on our first episode about 4 weeks ago. You know, unfortunately, as you know, time goes by, tragedies that happen here, you know, in early September, people move on with their lives and sort of forget until it happens again. And this is why we're going to continue to do the podcast, and we have other things planned too, because you know we want to make sure to keep this in the forefront where people don't forget, because they say the average person forgets, you know, 50% of what they hear in 24 hours and some 80% in just 2 days. And, you know, Michael called this when it started. He said that nothing will probably get done by our elected officials to make things better. And unfortunately, in this case, he was right. And you would have thought anyone who thinks logically, that is, that those two horrible things that, you know, they happened here last month would have woken, you know, those great talkers, but very little action people that we have in the city council and so forth up. You know, we got horrible press, national attention that we didn't want. It made Memphis look bad. Ended up costing, you know, it's going to cost revenue too. And the loss of innocent lives is, you know, far outweighs the money. And, but, you know, we know our city council and the mayor and all those people, they don't want horrible crimes like this to happen, but many of those people just see dollar signs. And, you know, what, if anything, is finally going to get, what's it going to take for our city leaders to stop talking and putting some type of plan in action and get to the root of the problem? What do y'all think it is?
God, I think there's so many factors behind it all. Mental health is one of them. We just don't, it feels like, I don't know if we're not putting our resources in the right place, or if there's something else going on, because those two crimes that you referenced were both the epitome of just abject evil. And you know, when I mentioned that, I've been telling people for years that 98% of the crime in Memphis is not random. And then you look at the Eliza Fletcher case, which was totally random. And my God, the case of the other guy who FaceTimed his crime, I don't know how you get more random than that.
Yeah.
So you're right. It should have woken people up to a degree where something needs to be getting done.
I'm sorry to say and sad to say that, like those two crimes right there, I don't know if there's anything you can ever do to stop something like that.
Right.
Right.
There's going to be things that happen that we cannot preach or teach or help. It's been that way all through history.
Because you think those people are just, they're
evil people. They're evil people. And it's sad. But there's some things I just don't think can be done. Exactly. But there are other things that can be done. And I'm not politically correct, so I better not say too much. But I've got my feelings on it, but I better not say here. So,
but they're but like for gang related crimes, we have a good friend who was carjacked at Poplar and Perkins, Lisa.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 or 8 months ago, and she learned through the prosecutor that it was a gang initiation. You know, that sort of thing, it seems to me, can be helped.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, but that seems to me to be something where we have not reached the kids at an early enough age, or not effectively enough.
Like Mike said earlier, invest money into the kids in the city.
Give them alternatives.
You give them something else, yes. Something better.
And I don't mean just pour money into the problem, because I'm going to tell you, the more, look like the harder I work, the more taxes I pay. So
I know.
I definitely understand that issue. However, I do think and a lot of times politicians, they're not taxpayers. And I have to beg to differ, because anytime you buy anything from a store, you pay sales tax.
Paying taxes. Yeah.
Anytime you go to a movie, you pay sales tax. Anytime you stay at a hotel, you pay sales tax. So even though they don't necessarily pay money for a property, like a lot of us have been blessed to do, they're still paying into the tax base. Now, my thing is, I have no problem, just like I think we just gave $90-some million to Carlisle and the crew for one bill. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I'm saying, I know you have to have economic development. I know you have to shore up the city. I know you have to do things. But I say, don't make the Fraser Neighborhood Alliance come and have to beg for $100,000 when they want to do some things out there in their community. Don't make the citizens have to come beg when you want to have nice things in your community, when you're paying into the tax base. And then the mayor say, we're going to concentrate on the core of the city, which is downtown, which that translates to, we're going to give all of these developers and all of the movers and shakers in the city, we're going to help them to get richer, while we're still denying you access to the tax base. In that, you still got problems picking up, you won't even get trash picked up around here. We were having serious problems with that, I mean,
how is the core, I'm sorry, Mike, so how is the core of the city not all the different communities? How is Orange Mound not the core of the city? How is Binghamton not the core of the city? How is Fraser?
They're moving out. We're going to start down here, and then we're going to move out slowly. But I'm going to tell you, I went up to Nashville, and I was amazed at the growth, number one, growth in Nashville, and number two, and how they were doing it. They're getting back to the mom and pop concept. Everything is not necessarily concentrated right downtown anymore. As you even go out from downtown, you have neighborhood restaurants, you have neighborhood shops and stores, you have neighborhood, whereas it was kind of like when I was in DC back in the 70s and I wanted real Italian food. All I had to do was go down the street. There was an Italian restaurant where they were in there. It was Italians in there cooking Italian food, and it was right from my apartment. And I was like, wow. And I didn't even, live downtown, you know, kind of suburbs or what have you. But we're not investing in the growth. If we don't invest in the young people, they're going to continue the cycle of violence.
Yeah.
We have to, there are two things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to invest in the young people to get them, because we have a high illiteracy rate here in this city. So we have to invest in them. We have to look at the parents to see if we can get them involved in parenting classes and different things like that. But there are a lot of people, like Rick was saying, and I'm saying also, they're already gone. They're into a life of crime. There is no turning back. And you're going to need the law enforcement portion for that, just to protect law-abiding citizens.
That's right.
But the core is going to have to be directed at the young people that are coming up so that we can stop the cycle. You know, it may, you know, we in our 60s, so hell, we may not even see it. But at least we can get started at moving in that direction, because it may take a whole nother generation.
That's right, because there may be a young 9-year-old who will be the next Cleotha Abson. Abson, you know, if we don't catch him now.
Well, another thing is, you got these young kids that are seeing homicides all the time. You know, we in and pop out. The cameras pop in and pop out. And like Mike was saying, you know, after time goes on, we no longer, or the community as a whole no longer even think about it. But those individuals that were affected by all of those people that were killed, it was somebody in somebody's family. It was somebody in the area or the vicinity that saw it. You have these young kids that are living in these houses, in these Pampers, like you were talking about. And we get to stand on the outside looking in, but guess what? They're living it every day.
Yeah.
That's right.
All of the shootings that are occurring, you know, we're still breaking records with the number of homicides each year that we're having here in the city of Memphis. We used to have 100 and something or 70 something a year. Now we're up to 300 and whatever a year. Yeah. And for a population of 600 and some thousand people, you know, that puts us up there to being a violent city, or the second most violent city, or the third most violent city. And that's the people that are killed. We're not talking about the people that are shot and that Regional 1 saves on a daily basis.
That's right. Or who are traumatized by hearing shootings every night in their neighborhood.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
We don't even count that. So there's a long list of things to do. But if we each do something.
Well, we're going to start with Flip My Life.
That's right.
Thank you. We are.
We're gonna flip.
That's a segue, Marybeth.
It's what I specialize in.
Yeah.
So,
Marybeth,
I'm sorry. Tell us about the GoFundMe. So if people want to donate, how they can get to that.
Oh, we appreciate that very much.
Thank
As
you.
I said, we do have one sponsor. The lawyers are signing off on it, so I can't mention their name, but they're a very large entity throughout Tennessee, actually, and they're being very, very generous to help with in-kind donations. But we have not had any success finding grants that would pay for production. And it's really important, since God said this was to be a show. And I believe that's, again, so that we can reach compassionate people who just don't understand why a restorative justice system would help the whole community be safer. We want to proceed with that. It's not enough just to renovate a house. So the GoFundMe would pay for production costs, and it's real simple. It's gofundme.com/F, the letter F as in Frank, /flip my life. And we just, if
any money donated, Marybeth and I are doing this for nothing. We're doing fine on our own. But every dime will go towards back into Memphis community and back into helping someone get in a house.
So on my Facebook page this week, we're actually telling the backstory that we just told you over a course of several days, so that it's little short increments. And we have the GoFundMe set up there. If anyone wants to share that, that's another thing we need. Since this will be a web show, we need help building an audience. So we're asking for prayers, shares, and $5.
Give me $5. Can't give me $5.
$5.
You was in Memphis too long, Marybeth.
We're just figuring that I've always heard my whole life, even before I had God in my life. I always heard he doesn't equip the called. No, he doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. So we're counting on him to equip. He's the executive producer. If he wants it done, it'll happen $5 at a time.
Right.
But prayers and shares would be great, because we don't know whose eyes are out there. And when we're going to show the concept video on Saturday, I believe is the day. We have it in a stepped, like tomorrow is part 3 of the story on the Facebook page. And then when we share the concept video, if people just share it, maybe somebody will see it who wants to take over the business side of this production. That would be great.
I do a show also, Marybeth, called Memphis 360. When you share if you could, send me a copy of what it is that your concept show is, and I'll run it on my show as well.
Well, thank you.
That would be great. Thank you.
That's okay.
That
And
would be great.
maybe while you guys are down here, when you get down here, if you're down here during, I shoot on Thursday nights, 6 o'clock right now. So
Awesome.
you guys can come on and talk about that as well.
Would love to. Love to. We're going to be down there a couple of times. We're speaking to a church next week on
the 23rd.
And then we're going to start shooting. We're going to be down there on the 12th to start shooting. So
November.
We'll be there on the Thursday of that week, actually. So, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. But yes, I would very much appreciate that. I will email you both the concept video too, just so you can see it and meet Erica. She's fabulous.
Okay.
What you guys doing, you putting this together, it's wonderful. It takes a lot of heart and a lot of love, and we're glad to share this with the community, because this is something that people need to know about. Positive changes in a negative world, they're never easy, and they take a lot of hard work, and they take a lot of smart work. And this is the beginning of something, truly special, what you guys are doing. And so we're really glad that y'all came on today to share your story.
Well,
thank you for having us.
Love your license plate. Think big.
Yes.
I was telling Rick about you. You're a think big kind of guy. So this is going to take some big thoughts, believe me. I'm going to have to channel some Michael Zellner in those moments of discouragement.
Thanks again, guys. And look forward to seeing you soon. Yeah, please send us that video.
Will do. Good to see both of y'all.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.